Good morning, everyone. I'm Simon Roderick, the Managing Director of FramSearch, and welcome to our webinar today on the drivers of client trust in wealth management. I'm delighted to be joined by Anthony Scott from Raymond James. Anthony, how are you today?
Very, very well, thank you, Simon. No, thank you for this opportunity. Big subject.
Really important subject. I'm looking forward to getting onto it. Just before we do, just some housekeeping. We're going to be running some polls throughout the session, and we'd be really grateful for people's input and support on that. And also there is a section where you can ask questions, and what we'll try and do is we'll try and work those questions in at the end of the session. But I think probably, Anthony, probably a good place to start is why don't you tell us about you and then a little bit about Raymond James, just to give us some context.
No, certainly. So a little bit about me. Different sort of career. Actually started off in the army for 7 years, predominantly out in Germany, and then the wall came down in 1989. So I think I became surplus to requirements, and the Gulf War started kicking off, part one. But that was 7 years. Spent 7 years out in the Far East working for one of the trading companies out there. So again, not financial markets, but my glorious background career, I was marketing manager for Volvo for Taiwan and latterly China, and a bit of time working with Carlsberg as well. So all under the same group. But time to come home, actually sort of return home after best part of 14 years living abroad. Came into the city, 1999, discovered Charles Stanley. At a sort of relatively late age, had to get through all my exams and everything else. So background sort of predominantly management, but moved onto the investment management side, built a team within Charles Stanley. So 15 of those years was as an investment manager looking after clients. And in that time, we took a relatively small advisory business and we turned it into around $500 million of discretionary assets under management. So it was very much about building teams and things like that. Was on the board of Charles Stanley, then moved to Raymond James. That was 9 years ago. So moved here and look after the business development side. So recruiting, bringing people on, and various other sort of areas within the Raymond James environment. And it's you know, it's been a really exciting time. Raymond James, incredible company. I will talk about it later in terms of values and culture. I don't think I've ever come across a company that lives its culture to the extent it does and the way it does. But we can talk about that sort of thing later. But
and how large is Raymond James in the UK?
In the UK, obviously we've now come together with Charles Stanley. So my former colleagues all caught up with me. We've come together with Charles Stanley. We're around 50 billion in total of assets under management, spread across a range of branches throughout the UK. So very much UK focused, but part of this Raymond James family, and we do talk about it as a family. Raymond James as a whole is now over $1.7 trillion.
Wow.
We look after 8,900 wealth managers across the piece. So big in Canada, huge in the States, and UK is the sort of third leg of that. And we've really sort of grown that and using the scale to benefit everybody who's part of that family as well.
Well, let me delve into that, because I think, you know, the subject today is about trust, and it's about the drivers of client trust. And actually, that's an intangible, isn't it? You know, it's a psychological, intangible, important piece of what you do as wealth managers. Now, I often find it really interesting when I talk to really experienced good wealth managers who've grown businesses like you, that actually they're not just there talking to clients about investments or financial planning. You're financial coaches, but to a certain extent, you're also life coaches. You know, people share things with you, life events, perhaps things that people wouldn't realise. So what I'd like to delve in today is, obviously, you know, Raymond James is a market leader, so there's lots of things there that we can talk about that other firms, may be interested in, but also some of the more deliberate actions that we have in terms of building client trust. So coming back to what I said about performance, I mean, in your experience, is performance the be all and end all?
No, I think is the short answer. Over the years, we've done a lot of client surveys, and I know lots of people love it when this happens, but it does provide invaluable sort of information. And interestingly, performance is obviously one of the things you talk about. And generally, on a sort of scale of about the 10 major things, it will come in at about fourth or fifth.
Right.
But if I go back to my dodgy past as marketing manager for Volvo, what is trust about? You trust your car to work. You trust it. You expect it to do certain things. If you drive out of the garage and one of the wheels goes in a different direction to the rest of the car, it did happen once, and was quite an expensive thing. That is now letting you the trust down. So you can talk about performance of portfolios. That does have an expectation that performance is at a reasonable, acceptable level. Obviously, really poor performance will not help. So we put a lot of work into making sure that people who work with us have the resources to be able to deliver that and deliver to clients what it is they're expecting. And really,
so quality outcomes are naturally very important. You're looking after people's money. That's a huge responsibility. But if you look at, for example, the client relationships that you've had that have maybe endured 50, just a really interesting quote. I don't really watch the show too much, but Don Draper of Mad Men fame has a really cynical view of clients. He says the day you're signing a client is the day you start losing them. Now, in wealth management, that would be an appalling outcome. And you wouldn't grow a business as large as you guys have if that was the way that you did. So the clients that you've had for 15, 20 years, what do you think the things that they consistently value are?
The world of wealth management is an intensely personal thing. It really is about developing relationships, and right at the top of that comes trust. And over the years, I've done a number of talks to people who are new joiners. And trust, empathy, and understanding are the top of that list. It's so much what the regulator is about building trust. It sits there as one of its primary roles overall. But you're talking to somebody who is asking you to look after their nest egg, their investments, their pension. As we all know in the world today, it takes a long time to build savings, to look after them, whether they're inherited or whether they are things that you've built yourself in your SIP. You've got to be sure that the person that you are talking to, the financial advisor, the investment manager, has got your best interests at heart. And I'm afraid that, over the years, there are too many examples of things where that has failed. You are dealing with, a really important asset. So building the relationship starts with trust, and it then builds onto the relationship side. Interestingly, I mean, as Raymond James, we're just relaunching our sort of tagline, which has now been moved to the power of personal. And this reflects on actually Raymond James as a whole, whether it's clients or not, but it is about a personal service in these times of AI coming in, the online solutions that people have got where, sell it cheap, stack them high. The lack of a personal service, the ability to pick up a telephone and talk to somebody who is making decisions, able to make decisions, have an opinion that's an educated one. It's a vital component of that mix. And I dealt with, when I was looking after clients, I was dealing with families where you'd be looking after parents, children, some point the grandparents were in there as well. And I think that the relationship that you build up with that is vital to keeping people, to keeping
Yeah,
them.
and listening to what you're saying, there's lots of things that I think are particularly interesting. Power personal is a great line, but you're a business at scale, aren't you? You're I run a boutique, and having values cascading through a business of your size, I guess the power of personal comes into, and you're talking about empathy, about who you're hiring and the process you have in terms of how you're hiring. You talked about intergenerational transfer, and we'll definitely talk about that at the moment. But are there deliberate things that you're doing in terms of the hiring side of things, client outreach and contact points to kind of enhance that trust?
I think the one of the biggest things, which if I look at, from our parent in the States and Canada and here, I think one of the biggest signs of trust that we use is the lack of restrictive covenants. So generally speaking, if there are little nuances within that, but we believe that we want people to join us because they want to join us, to be with us, to keep them focused on looking after clients, and because they want to be here. We want to sit on the same side of the table as people that we work with, who affiliate with us. So
I guess the argument is that being sort of challenging, but that makes you as a business operate to a high standard, because if people can go at any time and take their clients with them, you have to create the environment where they don't want to leave.
Yeah. I was in one of the offices in the States some time ago, and there was a sign on the wall saying, "If I can leave any time I want, why would I leave?" But to your question on what do we do to reinforce that, when someone is looking to come and join us, we do have a fairly detailed process. But that process is to make sure that everybody understands what we're about, what it is they want from us, and that there are no misunderstandings, so that somebody doesn't walk in the door and go, "Oh, I thought." I thought X, and the answer is it wasn't there. So there's a big process. We spend a lot of time showing people our systems, processes, the way we work, introducing them to people who already work with us. We have no better adverts than those people who are already part of the family, as it were.
No.
So getting that culture right is absolutely vital. And even when we were looking at Charles Stanley as part of the Raymond James family, you looked at the criteria for an acquisition. Top of that list was culture. Without that, from the Raymond James perspective, if the culture wasn't right and there wasn't a good fit, then all the rest of it, the numbers and everything else, were not going to work.
No, exactly. So coming back to we're talking about intergenerational transfer, and we're talking about building client trust over time. How does that manifest itself in terms of hiring around team composition, for example? I mean, how thoughtful are people around that side of things within the wealth management community, or how thoughtful should they be?
Well, if I look at my own experience and sort of building a team from a relatively nascent thing, it was about making sure that we had the right people in the team, that we had the right attitude to clients. I think I caught somebody once talking to a client and saying, "I'll send your dosh to you," and I said, "Never ever do that again. This is hard word money. It's not something you refer to as dosh." But it was building a team of different characters. So the team I ended up building, there were 6 of us when I moved on to the management side. But it was about having complementary skill sets, not overlapping, making sure that you had a team that, diversity is part of that. What does a client want? What do they want to, what do they relate to? And trust is, you look at what you're doing, looking after their assets, their portfolios. You need them to, there is a huge amount of trust. You can't betray that trust. You've got to make sure that you are being, we talk about integrity, but making sure that they were aware of where risks sat, where things could go wrong, how you reinforced that, how you made sure that they were getting what they expected, and that they could pick up the telephone, and if it wasn't, if they're used to talking to me but they wanted to talk, I wasn't around, then somebody else can pick up the telephone. They could talk competently. We knew as a team pretty much everything about everybody that we were looking after.
And that's important, isn't it? And again, that's a conscious choice. So you're talking there about telephone access.
No.
Some firms have maybe moving to, or have moved in the past towards not having as much access to the relationship managers. But you think that's important, do you? You think that direct access to your investment manager or planner or somebody in the team, that they can access it, that was a conscious choice you made when running teams?
To come back to the power of personal, it's very much that, and so much about life and what we do in helping clients achieve their goals in the future is about understanding what they're about. And an algorithm, I haven't had an algorithm yet that really wants to do it, but being able to anticipate things that they wanted, coming up with suggestions that weren't necessarily directly what they were asking for, but can you think about this in a slightly different way? Is that going to work better for you? You know their children. I remember one client's daughter letting me know that she got engaged before her father. Oh, wow. Because she wanted to talk about the way that relationship, sort of worked. And it's lovely when things work like that. It's a great sign of what you've achieved. So yeah, trust is you spend a lot of time building it, and I regret to say it can be lost very quickly as well. But so it's making.
I will definitely come on to the ways you can lose it quickly, and then just come to intergenerational wealth transfer. I think that's a hot, just because the environment we're operating in at the moment, I think that's probably gone higher up the agenda than ever. We're all very aware as well of the sums that potentially are going to be transferring across the generations, and that needs to be done carefully and in a planned way. But how would you advise someone to build relationships across the generations?
By involving as much of a family as possible. So understanding the importance, when someone has a child in the days of junior ISAs, child trust funds as they were, getting people involved. And I did the same thing with my children. I did their child trust funds, their junior ISAs, making sure that they're part of that dialogue. I've always wanted my children to be involved and understand what is happening, and I'm in the middle of it. I have my mother is still with us, and making sure that we are transferring things, and where possible it's skipping generations, so that you are thinking bigger scale. It's not just about the one client, it's about the whole family, structuring it well. Oh my word, we have a window cleaner going past.
I tell you what, that's a brave job, because I know how high your building is. I just, all great plans change on first contact, as they say. So, we said we do questions at the end. I've just been asked a very good question by Mikey, who said, what's the hardest lesson you've learned regarding client trust, biggest mistake learning points?
What is I think it's about mistakes. And again, it's something I used to mention to anybody who joined the team. In fact, and anyone I have worked with in that thing, you will make mistakes. Mistakes happen. And the best way I heard from a chap who came and talked to us about it once was if something has gone wrong, something has happened and it's not right, first of all, get onto it, fix it. Secondly, paint it red. Don't try and hide it. Don't try and pretend it's not there, because people, whatever happens, if something has gone wrong, somebody will find out about it soon enough. And if you've tried to hide it, you will lose that trust. So where you can identify the issue, solve it, tell them about it, tell them what the resolution is, and show that you you care, but B, you found it. You didn't leave it to them to find.
So let's talk about some of the things that perhaps people may not think about. Operational failures, and I think clients nowadays, we live in quite a volatile world. I think certainly since COVID.
Yeah.
But how can strong operational teams support the building of that client trust, and consequently the other side of things, how can weak operational teams or processes within the business damage that trust?
I think a lot of this is about you and your team knowing what you do and not trying to pretend to be things you're not. I think over the years, some of the biggest sort of issues that have arisen have been about somebody trying to do the right thing and show knowledge when maybe they didn't completely have it. And again, it comes back to the issue is nobody expects everybody to know everything, but know how to find the answers. Get back to them. I don't know. I will find out. I will get back to you, and make sure you do, and you do it as quickly as possible. So that a lot of that is about structures. What is it you do? I remember one client who was very specific, had a whole load of issues that they wanted, taken into account in structures of portfolios, and eventually, I have to say, the relationship, was beginning to fray at the edges. And they would come in once a year, and I think they'd come up to London, they'd come into the office, and they were sort of, coming in 2020 hindsight and saying, why didn't you do this? What did you do this? And eventually I had to say, look, you're the only person I've got who's asking a lot of very specific different things. Every time we look at making changes or anything else, I have to think about you slightly differently. I really think we're not the people for you. I can find you someone else. And all of a sudden, the change was extraordinary. They sort of almost sat back. That okay, no, we want to stay with you. We like what you and the team do. We'll back off on that side. And actually, the next meeting that we had was completely different. It had established a trust that sort of hadn't existed before, because the limitations that they were putting were based on their concerns. But what they needed to be able to witness was that by doing what you do in the way that you do it, being able to explain it, was something that they really valued and appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually operational excellence is often unappreciated until it fails. I know from the work that I do that one of the biggest push factors for people leaving firms is anything that causes friction, anything where client reporting or turnaround times on power planning reports or things like that. Anything where people feel I've worked so hard to secure a client, and we work so hard to deliver for the client, but systems or friction, and obviously you work in a very complex, highly regulated environment. So operational excellence is super important. I mean, do you have any examples around that side of things where friction and turnaround times or tech has let down frontline teams?
Yes, I mean, sort of. I think if people follow in Citywire, and there have been sort of number of articles about some of the SIP providers taking a long time to turn things around, changing of systems, everything else, and all of a sudden you end up not only with somebody changing something significant like that, but then also, certainly in the world of pensions, you get budgets changing the way that pensions are treated, and you can just imagine the pressure building in a certain area on a limited workforce, and there are knock-on effects. You're dealing with them, you're trying to get things through, you're the front person as far as the client is concerned, and there are other bits going on in the back. Keep people in the picture. The best way of dealing with that, and in my way of thinking, is just let them know that you're on the case. Let them know that you are following up. Don't wait for them to come back to you and say, have you chased? Let them know that you're doing something on a regular basis. Try and anticipate it. And it's not shedding the blame, but saying, that if we can't do X, well, we'll look at something else. But keep them in the loop, because if they're having to pick up the telephone to talk to you, send an email that there's something on, that means that the anxiety has reached a certain level. Offset it, deliver, that you are looking after them.
Absolutely, and I think larger firms are well positioned to deal with changes in regulation as well. You've a firm of your scale and size, you've got the resources, and we work with some unbelievably good boutiques, very slick, high quality boutiques. But I think on the whole, scale really matters when dealing with all these issues. That's.
So people who affiliate with us are given significant levels of autonomy. So we have people who affiliate with us as employees. We look after independent contractors, and we also have people out there who use us purely as a platform. So we have a range of ways that people can work with us. But what we do is that we use the scale of Raymond James, whether it's in the UK or as a company as a whole. When you've got, as in our case, over 1.7 trillion of assets on things, it gives you the scale to be able to do things. Yeah. The work that's going on in the States on AI, which they've been using for over 10 years, and mainly in the back office where it doesn't get seen. So they've used it from a sort of supervision perspective to make sure that things, they don't get false positives or they're checked. It refines it, allows focus. They're increasing in fact, they've just launched in the States something called Raymond James AI, which is there to help people spend more time with clients and learn and reduce the friction of some of the paperwork that we have to deal with. One of the few areas where we in the UK don't have autonomy, historically speaking, from the rest of the company is in cybersecurity. Nobody wants to learn the lessons of Jaguar Land Rover, M&S. They're high in people's mind. As a company, Raymond James spends over $1 billion a year just on IT.
Wow. Wow.
And the advantage we have is piggybacking on that, being able to provide that security. I've been around the cyber security center there, and from the States, they're plugged back into GCHQ. Not as a result of us, but that's part of the global network. It's extraordinary. Yeah. We try and provide that scale to the boutiques and smaller companies. So we're sitting behind the scenes in some of these cases.
That's really fascinating. And drawing on another point you mentioned earlier, we were talking about having diversity of experience, having the right people in the right seat to work with clients, and complementary skills. Relationship managers, whether it be planners or investment managers, they are the glue with the client. They're the interface to the client. So what's your view on what happens when relationship managers move on or retire? I mean, is it an HR issue? Is it a commercial risk? Where does the relationship often sit, with the individual or the brand?
I mean, we're looking after teams, we're looking after branches, and it's about, we spend a lot of time working with them. We have a practice intelligence function, which again is piggybacking off Raymond James University in the States, helping to train people on building a business. And this is sort of, do you want to engage? If you do, we're here to help. We're here to help you grow that business. We're here to help you think not only about where you are on joining us, where you want to be, but what's the end game? how is retirement going to be managed? How do you build a business that is transferable onto the next generation, and building a value that you can realize when you come to retirement? You know, the coming together of under Raymond James Wealth Management of the old Charles Stanley team and the old Raymond James Investment Services team gives us a lot more scale. You know, if somebody wants to sell their business externally, it happens. I'm going to put that down as far as I'm concerned in the success box. But you know, ideally, we provide an environment where it's you know, we have an internal market as well as looking at an external market. So how do we make life easy? How do we help them to plan the future? How do we help them build value, create value? And it's something, and again, in the States, they do very well. They've actually got, I would rather cheekily refer to it as almost a dating website. If people are looking to leave their business and they're in somewhere else, are there other people out there on a no-names basis that this business could be of interest to?
Because you haven't got any restricted covenants as well, I guess. So that's the key. But I find your point around helping investment managers develop their career really interesting, because I think it's a career where you need a lot of different skills to be successful. And so you may be very, very strong in client relationships, but you may not be particularly strong in growing your practice. We've all got different skills, haven't we? Some people are very good on the business development side, perhaps not good on the operational stuff that we were talking about earlier on. So practice, and I would say that one of the frustrations to investment managers is that they get to a certain point and then they're not quite sure where they go next in terms of growing their business. They want to, but they're not sure how. So practice intelligence is helping people get to that next level. And coming back to our core theme is looking at the client dynamics and relationships and how you gain more. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, there is fascinating research, and again, leveraging off what our colleagues in the States do. There was a presentation that we were given by someone called the Golden Hour, and it was all about looking at clients and how you work with them, the amount of time you invest in clients and them in you. And that came into the process side that you're talking about, is understanding what you do for clients and making sure that they understand what you do for them as well. But sometimes there is are you devoting the right amount of energy and time onto the right sort of clients? That comes back to, do you understand what it is you do and what is your niche within that? People can at times be in too much of a hurry to be everything to everyone. Well, refine it, be proud of what you do, and look at it. We had a presentation at our annual forum last year from an a financial advisor, wealth manager in the States, relatively new business, but his entire focus was on was looking after clients who were selling or had sold companies, and his minimum investable assets was 10 million and wasn't interested in anything below that. And he spends a lot of time traveling around the States. The States is always full of these wonderful examples, but you can still refine that in terms of what you do and how you do it. This is something Practice Intelligence helps people to do. And even more interesting, I think, as we move into the world of AI and the way that works, is the way that lots of talk in the market about search engine optimization, making sure you've got the right keywords on your website. Well, as we move into AI, look at the questions you ask AI. You don't ask the same questions you used to do in a Google search. You put a lot more detail in there. The people who are going to be able to work best with this are the people who really know what they are, can talk about it, can make sure that people, that they are identifying the right people, because that's what AI will do, getting third-party validation on that. So our landscape is changing from a how do people find you, but when it comes down to the end of it, it's about that personal service.
So I'm going to ask you one very quick question before we move on to cyber, because I think it's a really, really interesting topic in the current world that we live in. You've already said that you spend £1 billion a year on IT over at Raymond James, but my
dollars,
question
we're not claiming pounds yet. But
my question is, sorry, dollars. My question is, who does the client really trust? So I'm launching the poll. Do you think that it's the individual relationship manager, the wider team, the investment process, or the brand? Where in your experience, where does that relationship sit?
Is that asking me, or are we asking?
Well, I'm asking you actually. Yeah, I'm not giving you an easy way out. I'm asking other people, but I'm putting you on the spot. So,
all of the above.
Yeah.
I think that we look at our model and the power of personal. We believe that the wealth manager has the primary relationship, but in terms of and the model is predicated around that. But that requires an awful lot more. It's not just about the individual, it's also about the brand that sits behind it. And the we're going to talk about cybersecurity in the future. Knowing not only that the individual has got what you need, but they've got the backup, they've got the resources, they've got the protection on behalf of the client to deliver that. But no, it's about the personal relationship between the wealth manager and their clients, building that, securing that, looking after people properly. You're dealing with an awful lot, and where have accidents happened in the past, and what have I witnessed before? I had a client who sold his company, set up trust for his company, and actually gave a lot of the proceeds to, I'm not going to name it, but other companies with sort of bigger names. But I would get regular calls from him on email saying, look, this is what they're suggesting I do now. What do you think about this? And I'm going, well, the relationship's with them, but you go, yeah, okay, all right, you are still my client. You're still a very important client. So we'd talk about that. And eventually he lost patience with them. He didn't really trust them. He felt he was being sold stuff. He felt that they were getting a sales call saying, right, this is what we're going to sell next, and walked away from that relationship to our benefit. So again, coming back to the trust, we established a level of trust that didn't appear to really get questioned. We kept them in the loop. But the temptation was there to try something else. So you always, you've got to be aware there are competing. There's always competition for attention out there.
So if you think I put you on the spot, some couple of really great questions for the Q&A afterwards. So just to pre-warn you, Anthony. So yeah, but look, I really do want to talk about this cyber resilience thing and brand strength. You mentioned JLR and M&S. As it says here, do you think clients explicitly consider cybersecurity these days?
I think it's much higher on the list of worries than it used to be, because of of the nature of AI, the examples, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I think it's a miserable place to exist. But I remember when emails came out, and trying to work out whether you trusted emails, what you did, what your processes were to make sure that you weren't getting instructions from the wrong person, letters with signatures. We did have a client who sent a letter saying they changed address, and you looked at this and went, hey, hold on a second. That seems totally illogical. And the signature, it turned out, had been borrowed. But power of personal, we know them. But now you're living in the world of, can you trust a voice on a telephone? Can you actually trust a video? Are you real, Simon? Is that actually you, or are you AI? So we have constantly got things going on in the background. Sometimes they're annoying, it's for your own good. But making sure that we are looking after people, that we're providing all the security that we can provide, But at the end of the day, if you know a client, you can pick up the telephone and have a talk with them about something ridiculous because you've got a relationship on that. That helps, that is part of the whole thing. But we live in a world where you are required to document everything in great detail. That's an awful lot of information sitting out there somewhere.
And also as well, the nature of the information you deal with as well.
And
You are dealing with highly sensitive information. I guess the guardrails around cybersecurity, but actually guardrails around now with using AI, what data is it input and how that's protected into internal AI policies and systems is going to be becoming ever increasingly important.
it's absolutely crucial. We've done exercises looking at what you do when sort of something does happen. So again, practicing in the background, making sure that systems, processes, backups, everything else work, are rehearsed, are practiced. As an office, we get phishing emails from the center, and some of them are getting really quite convincing. And if you accidentally click on something or do something, it will come up and tell you that that's what happened. You've been caught. It's very satisfying when you get them and you go, no, that just doesn't make sense. But tiny little things, it appears to come from LinkedIn. It doesn't. Go and read various bits and pieces, and just having that winding on in the background is a vital part of the whole.
Yeah, and the fact that you, again, coming back to the ability to have teams of people developing this and working hard in the background to it's a team game, isn't it? So the relationship manager is out there talking to the client, but you are supported by an awful lot of number of people who are working hard every day to provide top quality AI, top quality cybersecurity, top quality practice intelligence. There's a whole team. I think you've got a pretty large team of researchers as well in terms of when it comes to investments. It's that coming together, isn't it, of an awful lot of moving parts. But perhaps people are taking cybersecurity for granted, or aren't realizing that is a potential threat in the future.
Well, I mean, it's something that the regulator is interested in generally, is to make sure that is very much part of its remit. But put that to one side. So, I mean, there will be people who will be quizzed about it and sort of have to answer. And put that to one side. It's, you're now talking about the reputation of your firm.
Yeah.
So going back to trust, I could be the most trustworthy person in the world, but if something falls over somewhere and taints the overall brand, it's going to taint me as well. So it's there for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, that's been a really helpful session. I'm going to get onto the Q&A because there's a couple of very, very good questions, and I'm conscious of time. But I'm taking from all of these things, we talk about this intangible thing of trust, and I'm taking from that it's a culture and values thing that particularly as businesses get larger, needs to be reinforced, and that comes from the top. Hiring the right people that live those values, but also people that reflect what clients want and their diverse experiences, and then really talking about the ability to deliver, on what you promise, that operational infrastructure, cyber resilience. It's a culmination of all of those things, and some are psychological, human things, but some are very deliberate decisions that business leaders need to take, and perhaps relationship managers need to be aware of. Is that a good summary?
Absolutely. I mean, I hate to sort of say, but look at where things have gone wrong in the past. Understand that, make sure that you are not exposed to them, or that somebody can look after that for you properly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. I've got two questions here. Really good question I'm going to start with. Have you ever had to balance your own values and principles with the objectives of a firm in order to retain trust with a client? And how do you do it?
Gosh.
I didn't ask that question.
No.
So I think it's a fantastic question.
I would have to say at that point, is it the right firm?
Yeah.
No, the short answer is maybe I've been very lucky. I've never worked in an environment that has really, said this is this is your target, this is what you've got to do, etc. And having some sort of highly driven sales. It's always been about building the right product, not trying to force things out there, and that sort of culture would really worry me.
So it's about picking the right firm and a firm with the right incentives.
Yeah, and if I talk, we talk about earlier about sort of growing a business so that you can realize value at the end of the day when you come to it, so it can be passed on to other clients. That sounds quite ruthless, but it isn't. This is about building long-term value for clients, for the people you look after, for yourself, and making sure that that is something that is transferable. This works for clients. This is about looking after them. You can make all the plans you want. If they don't believe in it, they don't believe in you, they don't believe in the future, none of it's going to work.
No, your fortunes are tied to theirs, aren't they, ultimately? Absolutely. If you want to build a great business, you've got to retain people and you've got to get them a great experience. Another question. How do you approach building trust with clients who differ significantly in background to yourself, where you have a lack of things in common?
Coming back to what we were talking about, building teams.
Yeah.
Make sure you've got a team that represents, the core values, but have younger people. It's diversity at all levels within the team that represents the clients that you aspire to, that you look after, and that you aspire to look after. So no, it's being, you can't be all things to all people, and there are times when you should definitely say to someone, I'm not the person for you, I can help to introduce you to someone that can. That builds credibility all on its own. So
hire the right people, have confidence in them, and don't always hire people like you. You know what I mean? I think that's the danger sometimes in hiring. That you think, well, actually, if there's lots of people with my background or my views, then that's the right way. But actually, what you're saying there is that you again, it comes back to that diversity point, doesn't it? You need people with different views and skills and outlooks to
encourage challenge.
Yeah,
I could get political about other places about this at the moment, but you don't want to live in an echo chamber.
No,
you want to work in a team that is a team. Yes, it needs leadership, but there needs to be the ability to challenge within that team. We see it at all levels of sort of corporate governance and everything else. Challenge is a good thing. It's the only way you're going to get better, and you want to get better for your clients.
Well, I think that's a great way to leave things. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. If anybody does want to follow up on anything that we talked about today, then please don't hesitate to contact me, and I'm sure I can contact you with Anthony. He won't mind. But I really appreciate your time, Anthony, to talk us through that and to give your insights from your years in the industry.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Simon. Thank everybody who joined in on this, and yes, do let us know if anybody would like to know or understand more.
Have a good day.